it is more in the form of a covering letter along with letter written to A.O. Hume. Master Cage wrote a letter to Hume, but he didn't want to deliver it directly to A.O. Hume. So this letter, which we are studying today, was written to AP Senate, and AP Senate was requested to hand it over to A.O. Hume. It was given in an open envelope because Master KH wanted AP Senate to read it before delivery. But he also cautioned AP Senate not to tell A.O. Hume that he has already read it. Of course, if A.O. Hume specifically asked, he was at liberty to disclose that he has read it. But as the master knew the personality of A.O. Hume, with a very high sense of superiority and egoism, he may not like his letter read by somebody else. But perhaps AP Senate being his friend, he may not have that kind of feeling. He may perhaps appreciate that also. That's why Master gave him a liberty, gave Senate a liberty to tell A.O. Hume that he has read it only if he asks about it. Otherwise, it will be just delivered to him without any comments from AP Senate. And therefore, it is perhaps necessary to know the contents of the letters written to A.O. Hume in order to fully appreciate the contents of this present letter, number 10, written to AP Senate. As we go along the discussion with the help of the slides, I will refer to the letter written to A.O. Hume simultaneously because they are mostly interlinked. So may I request for display of this slide now? Sister Vibhaji? Hello? Hello? Okay, we will proceed. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, it is already there.
Okay. Okay. I am unable to get the slide here. Okay. So the slide is about, hence I say it again, that the majority of our Anglo-Indians, among whom the terms Hindu or Asiatic is generally coupled with a vague yet actual idea of one who uses his fingers instead of a bit of cambric, and who adjures so would most certainly prefer an American to a greasy Tibetan. Here, I feel the master is trying to communicate to Senate as well as to Hume the racial bias which he had noticed among these two English gentlemen. It was an open fact that A.O. Hume had a great sense of superiority of the European race over the Indians or Asiatics in general. And at other place, Master has mentioned that this is not only in the respect of Anglo-Indians who have come over to India, but even in free England, the same bias was found in respect of the Asians and particularly the Hindus. They had a feeling that it is a backward race. They lack culture or civilization or refined manners and etiquettes, not very healthy and hygienic habits. And on this background, the master is making these comments. He wanted to bring it to their notice that such kind of biases in respect of Tibetan lamas or Indian rishis, and even about adepts who belong to the either Hindu or Buddhist race, had some of these features, being Indians or Asiatics. They had their own peculiarities, and what was necessary is to appreciate those peculiarities as distinct from those of the Westerners or Europeans, but should not be considered as inferior to them. These are generally the values held by them, where they give more importance to formalities, outward appearances, and impressions which you make on others through your manners and etiquettes. But they didn't realize that these kind of attitudes create a barrier between them and the masters from whom they wanted to get their teachings, from whom they wanted to get occult training, from whom they wanted to understand the secret doctrines of the East. So unless these are dropped down and they come clean from these biases and preoccupied notions about the good or bad or superiority or inferiority of the race, there was very little chance of any meaningful communication between the masters and these pupil or aspirants. Feeling that they know better than the masters about Europeans or European culture, they had the feeling that they can manage the society better than the people who were in the charge of the affairs of the administration and teaching part of the society, namely Helena Blavatsky and Colonel Olcott. Therefore, there were suggestions also from Evo Hume to form a separate branch, rather an independent society as such, which was called eclectic at Simla, especially an Anglo-Indian section, you can say. So masters had to clarify these points, that this kind of spirit about one's own race and the tendency to isolate them from others is against the spirit of universal brotherhood. Both of them failed to appreciate masters' concern about universal brotherhood. They were more concerned about the occult training and much less concerned about spread of theosophical teachings based on universal brotherhood. So they really did not get the main object of the society for which masters had founded it. Since they missed this main point, it was mostly of no use to part with training or occult truths. Masters felt they were not really ready for that. And even if masters wanted to do something, the brotherhood as a whole was not in favor of parting with those truths to people who were really not receptive and ready to make proper use of it for the betterment of the humanity. This letter addressed to Evo Hume was rather the last letter, indicating that masters were unable to continue correspondence with them, particularly with Evo Hume. They found, though, certain things common between both Evo Hume and AP Sinnett, like their emphasis on occult teaching and training and impressing people with phenomena. They found Sinnett to be more sensible in his approach to masters. He never felt that they are hiding something which they knew. He was ready to go by the guidelines which were indicated by the masters in order to be receptive to the occult training, while A.O. Hume was very adamant in that respect. He was trying to dictate his own terms on which he was ready to receive the training. He was somehow not really convinced about the competence of the masters. He had his own feeling that independently also he can get insight into the occult traditions, philosophies, and doctrines. He had written to the master KH that he is in touch with some good old Swami who was a master in Advaita philosophy. And Hume indicated that he intends to study Advaita under that Swami. And at that time, he also had a feeling that the masters are more like refined or cultured tantrikas. So he had a very wrong impression about the nature of the masters and their competence in the occult doctrines. Master even wrote in this letter sarcastically that he felt grateful to Hume because he called them refined and cultured, even though that was something which was not in line with his whole attitude and thinking. They also told him that the tantrikas to whom he was referring and comparing with, their rites and ceremonies which they observe will never be attempted by any of the members of the brotherhood. This was relating to the modern tantrikas. And therefore they said that for Europeans, in the sight of Europeans, character for adepts and ascetics seems as indispensable as to servant maids. So just as British people used to select a good servant maid with the kind of character they valued more, same yardstick, same type of yardstick, similar type of yardstick, they were applying to measure the merit of the masters, and which masters have brought to their notice and indicated in this letter to A.O. Hume that this was their last letter to A.O. Hume. Let us move on to the next slide. Here, Master has made mention of certain things like the things which are generally worn by people belonging to different races or nationalities, as a part of their culture or civilization. There are certain things which are valued in Tibet, different things are valued in Kashmir, and Europeans value something else. And master takes care to follow certain things if it doesn't contradicts with the philosophy which they stand for. Since it is based on universal brotherhood, emphasis is more on universality and universal acceptance of the modes of behavior and practices of living. Without any grudge for others' practices or without any sense of superiority for one's own practices. Unless that is done, there is always a dividing wall built by our wrong attitudes, which are never conducive to spread of or to formation of nucleus of universal brotherhood. He says, I am but a slave of my masters. He has to follow the discipline laid down by the occult rules. He may have personal feelings about his friends like A.P. Sinet. And within the freedom allowed to them by the brotherhood as a whole, they may have different approaches to different people, as we see in case of A.P. Sinet and Evo Hume themselves. Masters had definitely a sympathetic appreciation of Mr. A.P. Sinet because he had a sincere feeling that he can learn from the masters. So he was more sensitive and receptive. But in case of Evo Hume, there was a lingering doubt in his mind as to whether the masters really possess that knowledge which he was aspiring for, or is it only a trick played by Blavatsky and making of unnecessary tall claims about acquisition of occult powers and siddhis. Therefore, there are restrictions laid down to impart occult truths to those who are really not capable of receiving them, and if received, capable of using them for the humanity as a whole. Therefore, they were not permitted to have that kind of teaching. Evo Hume actually wanted this teaching to be at the personal level, face to face. And masters made it clear to him that as per the rules laid down by his superiors, it is not for him to agree to that or to give consent to that kind of request. He says, I know, to tell you the truth, I know I am not permitted to do so, and Mr. Hume's unfortunate letter has contributed much to it. In this letter,
पापा मेरी जिंदगी में चाहे कितने भी गम हो, मैं वादा करती हूँ मैं दूसरों की जिंदगी में सिर्फ खुशियां भरूंगी। मैं आपसे वादा करती हूँ मेरे लिए मेरा काम।
in this letter, A.O. Hume has made several allegations, and those, or he had written several letters, not one, but many. Sometimes he called that he got nothing from the masters, and therefore he gave nothing to the members or fellows of the eclectic lodge. So he tried to blame the masters for his failures. He was not prepared to work for the lodge or for the branch eclectic unless he was fully independent. He did not want to be subject to the parent organization, parent society, led by Madame Blavatsky and Colonel Olcott. And he was not interested in the spread of brotherhood. That's why he said that because of this reluctance of the master to part with the truth, he did not give anything to the fellows of the Simla Lodge. So he covered up his failure by blaming the masters. He praised the masters in the letter, but actually his behavior was contrary to it. That also masters have pointed out in this letter. He said that he appreciates the sincerity, great sincerity of the masters. But a year earlier, he had commented in the General Council of the Society, which was attended by many eminent senior theosophists. It was held in his billiard room. Their masters had suggested to H.P. Blavatsky to indicate to A.O. Hume that he should offer resignation of the eclectic society as president, because he was really doing nothing for the working or the growth of the lodge. And Hume was greatly upset over that. And that time he blamed the Master K.H. And that's why Master K.H. reminded him of the contradiction in his own writing and his actual behavior at the time of the council meeting. There was also another incident of one Mr. S.K. Chatterjee from Calcutta Lodge. This Mr. Chatterjee was almost inimical or enemy of the founders of the society. And he had written a letter to Hume saying that Theosophical Society has a political objective and Madame Blavatsky wanted a political program to be designed for her. And this was conveyed by Mr. Mohini Chatterjee to Blavatsky and also to the masters, because he was also a chela, Mohini Chatterjee. So master questioned, if Blavatsky had really written such a letter, why did Hume did not, or that S.K. Chatterjee did not produce that letter of Blavatsky? Because Chatterjee had only once met Blavatsky in his life, and that was at a much later stage than when he joined Theosophical Society. And the fact was that though Hume never held any meetings of the Eclectic Lodge, never answered to any queries of the members of the lodge who were very eager to know the theosophical teachings and truths, he never answered to them. On the contrary, he was very prompt in writing to S.K. Chatterjee, who was enemy of the society, who was making allegations against the founders of the society. With that kind of reputation, well known to Mr. Hume, he was very friendly with Mr. Chatterjee. So Master pointed out all these contradictions and also made it clear that he was not really interested in pointing out those contradictions, but he is rather compelled by Hume's letters to go into all this kind of scrutiny of his behavior and performance and his correspondence and his tendency to blame the masters for all the mess that he made of the affairs of the Eclectic Lodge. They pointed out that A.P. Sinnett's attitude was totally different from that of Hume. Therefore, they decided to continue their correspondence with A.P. Sinnett, though they stopped their correspondence once for all with Hume, unless perhaps in future he changes. But they were quite sure that he will realize that not so soon. It may take time, and that they have indicated in their own letter to that effect. Next. So it is this Hume's unfortunate letter that has contributed to the brotherhood, whole white brotherhood, to restrain Master K.H. from having any more correspondence with Mr. Hume. He was seen to be a person who was not at all likely to benefit from these teachings, but they made use of his talents, his intellect, for the freedom of India. Next, there is a distinct group or section in our fraternity who attend to our casual and very rare accessions of another race and blood, and who brought across the threshold Captain Remington and 2 other Englishmen during this century. And these brothers do not habitually use pluralisms. Here again, we can see that these Englishmen who by their dedication, by their service, and by their aspiration, were able to come across the threshold of the world of the masters. Captain Remington and 2 other Englishmen. So these people could do that because they had overcome their racial prejudices. They had shown that they can liberate themselves from those bindings or limitations or shortcomings, which are generally the shortcomings of the race or of the nation or of the civilization to which they belong. They have to rise above that. They have to become not belonging to any particular group or sect or any kind of dogma. They have to have a universal approach. Then only they can cross the threshold of the other world. Next. Hello. We will not discuss at present whether your aims and objects are so widely different from those of Mr. Hume. Hello. Hello. We will not discuss at present whether your aims and objects are so widely different from those of Mr. Hume. But if he may be actuated by a purer and broader philanthropy, the way he sets to work to achieve these aims will never carry him beyond pure theoretical disquisitions upon the subject. No use now in trying to represent him in any other light. His letter that you will soon read is, as I say, to himself, a monument of pride and unconscious selfishness. So here, the master is making clear how these 2 personalities, one of A.O. Hume and another of A.P. Sinnett, differed in terms of the aims and object of both. Hume had more selfish interest of gaining the occult training. He was more impressed by the creation of phenomena. He had even suggested the master to show to the people that the Times, which is published in London, if simultaneously it also appears in Simla, in India, which in those days took 3 weeks to reach India, it would prove and convince beyond doubt your superior powers, and it will be easy to spread theosophy very fast. The universal brotherhood is not a thing to be spread and popularized. That should not be the aim and object of the society. As I mentioned earlier, he said that Europeans or Western people will not be convinced by this idea of universal brotherhood. Christianity has already dealt with this 2000 years ago. There is nothing new in brotherhood. That was a kind of argument which Hume was making. So it was an unconscious selfishness, a monument of pride of Westerners, and to achieve his aims, his ambition through the society. And he was not seriously concerned about the objects or the cause of the Theosophical Society, which masters were interested to promote, but which in the eyes of Hume was not really important, and he felt it was not even necessary to have an organization like this to do this, because this is already being done. That was his feeling. So he missed the point. He failed to appreciate the concern of the masters, or he failed to really appreciate the real concept of the universal brotherhood, which masters had in mind. It was not just a literal phrase. It had a deep meaning to bring about a silent evolution, which the existing religions could not do. It was failure almost of all religions, even though their teachings and scriptures had that. In fact, that's why they said that theosophy will be the cornerstone of future religion. Why they talked of future religion? Because the existing religions failed to achieve their objects. The existing religions could not address to the problems of the humanity. They could not get rid of the sorrows and miseries of the humanity. It was like an orphan, not taken care of by the priests or leaders of religions, philosophy, science, whoever it may be. And therefore, masters wanted to bring to bear upon the understanding of the people that theosophy stands not for creating any phenomena or wonders or mysteries, but to improve the lot of humanity, to remove the suffering and miseries, to make the humanity really happy in the real sense, and then to make them understand the real spiritual truths. But somehow A.O. Hume totally failed to understand or appreciate that point of view, while Mr. Sinek had much better understanding in that respect, though perhaps he was not as highly intelligent and informed as Mr. A.O. Hume was. A.O. Hume was a very senior executive or bureaucrat in British Empire, and therefore he was highly respected also, and therefore from a worldly point of view he was perhaps much well reputed, respected and honored in the society in comparison to Mr. A.P. Sinek. But in the eyes of the master, A.P. Sinek was far superior than A.O. Hume so far as spiritual training is concerned. Next. Vibhaji, can you display the next slide?
Yes, it is
He
already
is
done.
too just and superior a man to be guilty of petty vanity, but his pride climbs like that of the mythical Lucifer. And you may believe me if I have any experience in human nature, when I say that this is Hume or nature, it is no hasty conclusion of mine based upon any personal feeling, but the decision of the greatest of our living adepts, the Chaberon of Dan La Mahachohan, the decision of the greatest of our living adepts, Mahachohan. On whatever question he touches, his treatment is the same. A stubborn determination to make everything either fit his own foregone conclusions or sweep it away. So here once again, Master reminds them that he is how guilty of petty vanity, how his pride makes him climb the heights which he is not really competent to reach. And this is based on the reading of the human nature, not only by the masters themselves, but even their Chaberon, the Mahachohan, who is much superior, for whom the past, present, and future all exist at one moment, who can fully read the human nature, human mind. And therefore, they had long before understood that this interaction with A.O. Hume will not produce any results. And that also he has made clear when he said that his judgment is not based on what HPB or Colonel Olcott have informed the masters about Mr. Hume. Hume had a feeling that masters have the capacity to extract from the brain of HPB and Olcott whatever feeling they had about A.O. Hume. And their remarks are based on this borrowed knowledge borrowed from HPB and Colonel Olcott. So Master says that they need not depend on this kind of reflections of others' thoughts appearing into their understanding. They have their own independent source of knowing things, though they may definitely not ignore what HPB or Colonel Olcott might have said about him, because he had seen how this gentleman has worked in the Theosophical Society. What were his approaches to the policies and the programs of the society? How much was he cooperative and enthusiastic to carry on those, to implement those? What was his behavior, or what importance or respect he gave to the earnest theosophists who were loyal to the founders, and how he took side of those who were against the founders, who were rather enemies of the founders, and who involved in unhealthy and insincere and even false practices in order to defame them, or in order to create wrong impressions about them. As I mentioned, he took side of Mr. S.K. Chatterjee from Calcutta, who fabricated a false story about HPB, that she wanted theosophy to be a political instrument, and she wanted S.K. Chatterjee to form a political program for her, which was never a case. There never was a letter on record which he could produce in support of his claim. But an intelligent person like A.O. Hume believed in him. He didn't question him about the letter, which any intelligent person of his caliber and cadre could have very easily done in the first instance, before making any allegations about the founder, against the founders. So this is what has been the background of what is said here. They knew this human nature, and they knew what was going to be the outcome of their interaction with Mr. A.O. Hume in advance. And they wanted only to make use of the better part, because he had that literary superiority to present things. He had good mastery over English. He had good control over the intelligentsia, intelligent people in India and abroad. And they made use of that faculty, which was not at all of much use for spiritual advancement, but which was definitely useful for liberating India from its foreign rule, and that they made use of. Next.
Sir,
So-
may I just request you that now, as we are nearing the end of our session time,
Yeah.
can we continue next time? Pradeep ji, is that the plan?
Okay. Yeah. Just consult Pradeep Mahapatra ji whether next session is available.
No, next session is not available.
No.
No, you just complete it within 5 minutes.
Okay. So, sir, there are a number of slides. Maybe you can summarize them. I will share the slides.
Yes, yeah.
Or
Tendulkar
in
is
some other next session, perhaps later on in February.
almost 3 months up to March end completed.
Completely
So
booked.
you summarize within 5 minutes.
Okay. Can you display the next slide?
Yes, sir.
he is too just and superior a man. By a rush, by a rush of ironical and adverse criticism, Mr. Hume is a very able man, and Hume to the core. Such a state of mind offers little attraction, as you will understand, to any of us who might be willing to come and help him. So masters have indicated here that they had willingness to come and help him. But they said Hume is Hume to the core of his being. That means he will not change. And therefore, actually, he wanted masters to come personally and teach them, which was not possible. And he was insisting on that. He was insisting that masters are not parting with the real secret knowledge which they possess. So he had a tendency to dictate his own terms, and that's why masters were unable to do what he expected from them. But if he had changed his ways as Mr. A.P. Sinnett did, they would have definitely helped him. I do not and never will despise any feeling, however it may clash with my own principles, when it is expressed as frankly and openly as yours. You may be and undoubtedly are moved by more egotism than broad benevolence for mankind. Yet, as you confess it without mounting any philanthropical stilts, I tell you candidly that you have far more chances than Mr. Hume to learn a good bit of occultism. So here again, Master, though generally does not make comparisons, has assured A.P. Sinnett that even though they are unable to help help Hume, they are definitely ready to help A.P. Sinnett to learn a good bit of occultism, because he doesn't have that kind of egotism which Hume had. And on the contrary, he has the broad benevolence for mankind, which was very much important in the eyes of the masters, because it is only with that kind of benevolence for mankind he could be an instrument to form a nucleus of universal brotherhood. So that they appreciated. In the philanthropy, what is expected is that there should be a real concern for the person to whom you want to help. There should not be any motive of gaining self or something for the self. So if that philanthropic attitude is totally a selfless attitude, then only it will help theosophy. So that's why he has assured A.P. Sinnett that you have far more chances than Mr. Hume to learn a good bit of occultism. Vibha, is there time or time is over?
Sir, we have about 4 more slides.
I think excuse me. I, for one, will do all I can for you under the circumstances and restrained as I am by fresh orders. will not tell you to give up this or that. For unless you exhibit beyond any doubt the presence in you of the necessary germs, it would be as useless as it would be cruel. But I say, try. So this clearly indicates that there is a doubt even about the presence of the necessary germs. Germs means that potential which has not yet shown its presence. So if there is doubt about the very potentiality of a person to benefit from this kind of interaction with masters, there was no point. But still they say, try, because they have already said, try, try, and try. No effort is ever lost. So, because no person is totally incapable of being benefited by any kind of training or other, provided there is sincerity of purpose and sincere effort. Do not despair. Unite to yourself several determined men and women and make experiments in mesmerism and the usual so-called spiritual phenomena. If you act in accordance with prescribed methods, you are sure to ultimately obtain results. So even those who believe in these phenomena, they can make use of certain techniques and make use of those techniques. Even H.P. Blavatsky has recommended in her collected writings practice of mesmerism. She said, wherever there are homeopathic dispensaries run by the Theosophical lodges, they can also add practice of mesmerism, which can greatly help to relieve pain and suffering of the people, in addition to medication. So these techniques, if they are made use of with proper judgment, proper intention, and proper motivation, they will definitely be useful for the humanity. They have their limited application, but nonetheless, they can be made use of to solve, not so much for solving the spiritual problems, but even lesser problems of humanity, which definitely will enable them to treat the path of spirituality in the course of time. Apart from this, I will do my best, and who knows? Next. For that, it has also suggested, I don't know, this has not been done on a wide scale in theosophy, but she had said that collect men who can do this. So it is worth organizing this in our centers, wherever there are homeopathic dispensaries. Strong will creates and sympathy attracts even adepts, whose laws are antagonistic to their mixing with the uninitiated. Strong will creates and sympathy attracts even adepts. So this is one thing which indicates how our approach should be if we want to benefit from the guidance from the masters. We must have that strong will, and we must be sympathetic to all those to whom masters want to really help for their evolution, whose laws are antagonistic to their mixing with the uninitiated. an association of affinities of strong magnetic yet dissimilar forces and polarities centered around one dominant idea is necessary for successful achievement in occult sciences. So here they have also suggested or given certain hints how we can succeed in this work of occult nature. We have to bring an association of affinities of strong magnetic yet dissimilar forces and polarities centered around one dominant idea. Here it is worth noting that dissimilar forces and polarities can also be utilized. We need not always harbor for similarities, similar things, and be antagonistic to dissimilar things. In fact, dissimilar things can be complementary to each other, where something is lacking and something is dominant. So if there is a proper matching and balancing of dissimilarities, then it is useful for successful achievement even in occult programs. What one will fail to do, the combined many will achieve. So this principle has to be used in organizing things or in our organization, its various lodges, federations, sections, everywhere. We should make use of the dissimilarities around a proper one dominant idea so that we can approach a problem from different angles with different methodologies and techniques, which one person may lack, but an organization of people consisting of dissimilar achievements can produce results. Of course, you will have, in case you organize, to put up with Olcott as the head of the parent society, hence nominally the president of all the existing branches. So here again, the master is bringing to the notice of them that they have to bear in mind the parent society from where they will derive the strength and inspiration for their lodges or branches or their programs and activities. They cannot be totally independent from the parent society because the energy of the masters will always flow through the society, which is their established channel for this purpose.
Tendulkar
So
ji,
that
we will
should be
close
known.
now.
Okay.
Tendulkar ji, it is now
Yeah.
long
So
time.
time is almost over, so I will stop here. If occasion comes sometime later, we will perhaps deliberate in greater detail on some of the issues and points. Thank you, Brother Mahapatraji, Pradeepji, Vibhaji. I now hand over to you this.
Thank you, Brother Tendulkar ji, for this detailed
Thank you,
explanation.
Vibhaji. Yeah.
And I now request Sister Meenakshi ji to give us the translation in Hindi.
Thank you. Namaste. Namaste, brother.
Thank you, Meenakshi.
आज हम लेटर नंबर 10 ले रहे हैं जो मास्टर के एच एपी सीनेट को लिखते हैं। मास्टर सीनेट से कहते हैं कि सामान्यतः अंग्रेज अभिमानी होते हैं, जातियों के प्रति उनकी प्रबल धारणा है। स्वतंत्र इंग्लैंड में भी हमें निम्न जाति के रूप में माना जाता है। हिंदुओं के तौर तरीके परिष्कृत नहीं होते हैं ऐसा माना जाता है। आगे मास्टर कहते हैं, इसीलिए मैं पुनः कहता हूँ कि हमारे अधिकांश एंग्लो इंडियन, जिन्हें हिंदू या एशियाटिक कहा जाता है, उनके बारे में आम तौर पर अस्पष्ट लेकिन सही कल्पना है कि वे सूती मलमल के कपड़े के बजाय उंगलियों का उपयोग करते हैं और साबुन से परहेज करते हैं। वे निश्चित ही एक तिबेटी के बजाय एक अमेरिकी को पसंद करेंगे। लेकिन मेरे लिए आपको घबराने की जरूरत नहीं। जब भी मैं अपने मित्र एपी सीनेट से सूक्ष्म या स्थूल रूप में अवतरित होऊंगा, तब मैं अपने अंगरखे की जेब में चीनी रेशम का रुमाल रखना नहीं भूलूंगा और न ही चंदन और काश्मीरी गुलाब की सुगंध का माहौल बनाऊंगा। अपने देशवासियों के हर्जाने में मैं कम से कम इतना कर ही सकता हूँ, ऐसा मास्टर कहते हैं। आगे वे कहते हैं कि मैं अपने मास्टर्स के अधीन हूँ और मुझे आपसे प्रत्यक्ष मिलने की अनुमति मिली है, लेकिन ऐसा मुझे दूसरों के साथ करने की अनुमति शायद नहीं दी जा सकती। और मिस्टर ह्यूम के दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण पत्र ने इसमें बहुत बड़ा योगदान दिया है। हमारे सिद्ध संघ में एक विशिष्ट वर्ग है जो एक अन्य जाति और वंशावली के अनौपचारिक और क्वचित ही होने वाले पदारोहण में भाग लेते हैं और जिन्होंने इस सदी के दौरान कैप्टन रेमिंगटन और 2 अन्य अंग्रेजों को चौखट के उस पार लाया है। और ये बंधुगण फूलों के अर्क को उपयोग में लाने की आदत में नहीं है, ऐसा मास्टर कहते हैं। आपके उद्देश्य और लक्ष्य क्या मिस्टर ह्यूम से अधिक भिन्न है, इस पर हम अभी चर्चा नहीं करेंगे। लेकिन यदि मिस्टर ह्यूम को शुद्ध और उदात्त परोपकारिता द्वारा सक्रिय किया जाए, तो जिस तरह से वह इन लक्ष्यों को प्राप्त करने के लिए काम करते हैं, वह उसे शुद्ध सैद्धांतिक विवेचन से परे कभी नहीं ले जाएंगे। उनका पत्र, जिसे आप जल्द ही पढ़ेंगे, वह गर्व और संवेदन शून्य स्वार्थपरता से भरा है। वे इतने श्रेष्ठतर व्यक्ति है कि उन्हें मामूली अभिमान के लिए दोषी ठहराना उचित नहीं है, लेकिन उनका गर्व पौराणिक कथा के लूसीफर की तरह बढ़ता ही जाता है। यही ह्यूम का वास्तविक स्वरूप है। यह मेरे किसी व्यक्तिगत भावना के आधार पर या अविवेकता से किया हुआ निष्कर्ष नहीं है, बल्कि हमारे जीवित सिद्ध संघ में से सबसे महान सिद्ध पुरुष महाचौहान का निर्णय है। ह्यूम जिस भी विषय को छूते हैं, उसके विचार एक ही तरह के होते हैं। सब कुछ या तो अपने पूर्वगत निष्कर्षों के अनुरूप बनाने का एक जिद्दी संकल्प होता है, या उसे विडंबना युक्त और विपरीत आलोचना करके तुरंत ही दूर हटा देते हैं। मूलतः ह्यूम एक बहुत ही कार्यक्षम व्यक्ति है। इस तरह की मनस्थिति हम में से किसी को भी कम आकर्षित करता है जो उसकी मदद करने के लिए तैयार हो सकता है। मैं कभी भी किसी की भावना का तिरस्कार नहीं करूंगा, चाहे वह मेरे सिद्धांतों से टकराते क्यों न हो। आगे मास्टर कहते हैं आगे मास्टर कहते कि आप में मिस्टर ह्यूम की तुलना में बहुत अधिक गूढ़ विद्या संपादन करने की संभावना है। मैं नए आदेशों के अधीन हूँ और इस परिस्थिति के तहत मुझसे जो भी होगा मैं आपके लिए करूंगा। मैं आपको कुछ भी त्यागने के लिए नहीं कहूंगा, क्योंकि जब तक आप पूर्णतः आवश्यक गुणों का प्रदर्शन नहीं करते, वह उतना ही बेकार व्यर्थ होगा जितना कि वह निर्मम होगा। मैं कहूंगा, आप प्रयत्नरत रहे, आप हताश न हो। आप ऐसे अनेक पुरुष एवं महिलाओं के साथ जुड़ जाए जो दृढ़ हो और मेस्मेरिज्म और तथाकथित आध्यात्मिक घटनाओं में प्रयोग करे। यदि आप निर्धारित विधियों के अनुसार कार्य करते हैं, तो आपको अंततः परिणाम प्राप्त करना निश्चित है। इसके अलावा मैं अपनी पूरी कोशिश करूंगा। प्रबल इच्छा शक्ति से सृजन होता है और दया भाव सहानुभूति जीवन मुक्त महात्माओं को भी आकर्षित करती है। जिनके नियमानुसार उन्हें ऐसे व्यक्तियों से मिलने की मनाही है जो दीक्षित नहीं है। मास्टर सीनेट से कहते हैं कि यदि आप इच्छुक हो तो मैं आपको एक निबंध भेजूंगा जिसमें यह दिखाया गया है कि यूरोप में किसी दूसरी जगह से अधिक विश्व बंधुत्व की जरूरत है, यानी एक प्रभावशाली विचार के चारों ओर केंद्रित प्रबल चुंबकत्व, लेकिन असमान शक्तियों और परस्पर विरोधी गुणधर्मों के मेल का एक संघ गूढ़ विज्ञान में सफलता प्राप्त करने के लिए आवश्यक है। जो कार्य किसी एक के करने में सफलता नहीं मिलेगी उसे संयुक्त रूप में से हासिल होगा। आगे मास्टर कहते हैं कि इस धारणा में न रहे कि आपका यह प्रोफेसर शारीरिक रूप में प्रकट होकर आपको सालों तक निर्देश देता रहे। मैं व्यक्तिगत रूप से आपके पास आ सकता हूँ जब तक आप मुझे मिस्टर ह्यूम की तरह दूर नहीं करते। मैं सभी के पास नहीं जा सकता। थैंक यू। धन्यवाद।
Thank you, Meenakshi ji. That was really nice. If anybody has any questions, you may please ask now. So I don't
have any question. You can close now.
Okay. So thank you, dear brothers and sisters, for joining the session, and with heartiest greetings of Sankranti to all of you. I would like to end the session by the prayer. Please join me in the prayer. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu.